Oh, hey everybody. Welcome to Brothers Forge Gaming. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 Super Nintendo games that you might be sleeping on. Alright, but before we get into any of that business, there's been a topic kind of going around, and it's a good topic to bring up, and that topic is collecting still worth it? Now, I know there's been several different, lots of different people doing that, kicking it around and doing response videos and whatnot. But rather than an entire response video to that, just ask yourself the question, is it still worth it? Hey, I was even asking myself the question, is it still worth it? There's a lot of factors that go into collecting and being a gamer and a collector. Burnout is a big one that I've heard talked about. Collector's fatigue, availability, not to mention just being able to, is it worth it to go out, drive your car around, use your resources, your time to go to all these different places, hunting around and looking for games. You can always go on the internet machine to get it, right? But you're going to pay top shelf prices maybe. And that's kind of where I've been at. I have a lot of games. I'm not, trying to pat myself on the back or whatever, but it's harder and harder the more games you get to be able to find that game that you want to get, that you want to pay that price for. And let's all face it, the prices of these things these days are outrageous. Like, average price for something I need to get now is not $5 anymore. It's more like, on the low end, like $60 for something that I actually kind of am interested in and that I want to add to the collection. I've been collecting my whole life, basically since I was a kid. I have a ton of games that I've had and acquired as a child and throughout my years. Since Easy and I started doing YouTube about 5 years ago, we've really started adding to the collection, and a big part of that was we started noticing a big increase in like prices and selections of stuff just being gone when we went, because we would just pick and choose a game here and there over the time, thinking, oh, it would never be where we wouldn't be able to go in and get a Nintendo game for like $5 or $10. Like, that'll always be a thing, right? Anyway, so when we did that, we just started pouring on collection. And when we really started noticing that, we're like, dude, we need to complete our NES collection. So that was kind of like our main goal. And we're pretty close. We're about 20 games away. And about half of those are, up in the price that we may never be able to find or even pay for those games. But there's still a few in the, couple $100 range that we could pick up if we could find them. And that's the hard part. So, begs the question, is collecting still worth it? But yeah, it would come down to see that the main kind of determining factor in that is, do you want to go out there and do that? Do you want to pay these prices? Do you want to, fight for maybe that one game that somebody else is in? Do you want to have to be there right when the store opens or be on a list and do all these different things? If that's not something that you're wanting to do, collecting might not be worth it for you. But I'm here to tell you today, you can still not only find deals here and there, thrift stores, garage sales, even your local stores, you maybe pay a little more for them at the stores. But I've actually found 10 really cool games on Super Nintendo that I didn't really otherwise know existed or I had forgotten about, that I used to rent or play back in the day. So I'm going to go over these with you. We're going to show you a little bit of gameplay on that. And, I'll tell you at the end. Is collecting worth it in my opinion? I will tell you at the end, so stick around for that and to hear my thoughts and opinions on that. And again, guys, welcome and thank you. You're here with Brothers Forge Gaming, so let's get right into this. At number, well, they're not really numbered, but here's 10 games in no particular real order. Other than that, I'm going to kind of give them to you in the value sense that you can get them if you're still looking around, hunting around for those. So up first, we have Battle Cars. Well, you can't really see that. Maybe I'll get up. Battle Cars. Now, this is kind of a cool game. It's a Namco game, which I always like. You gotta love being able to get Namco games. This is in pretty good shape. I need to find a new back for it, but whatever. It's a relatively inexpensive game. But these are games I've noticed that the prices, as soon as I was looking at them and bought them, they like doubled in price basically as soon as I bought them, which is crazy, right? Anyway, this is kind of like a F-Zero Mario Kart style Pilot Wings, the way they did that, the Super Nintendo graphics. You know what I'm talking about, that overworld thing. But it's kind of cool. It's like an early Twisted Metal in a lot of ways. If you ever played Chase HQ, which is actually another cool game to look for on the SNES. It's not quite the arcade port, but it's cool. I think that you can get the Chase HQ on TurboGrafx. I haven't played it, but it may be more of an authentic arcade port. But as far as Nintendo goes, you can get Chase HQ on the Super Nintendo, which this is, like I said, it kind of is a little bit like that. You get bounties. You get like a preliminary lap that you do, and then you kind of get bounties. You can get power-ups like off-road. You can upgrade your, your stuff, your engine, your weapons, your tires. It's really cool how that goes. So you should check it out. Very fun game, especially if you like those kinds of games. Alright, next up, Robocop 3. You can get this game on the Nintendo. It's one of those Ocean games, right? So Ocean, Orion. It's a movie video game. Now you've got those 3 on the Nintendo, and they're super hard on the Nintendo, right? Really tough controls. It doesn't get much better onto the Super Nintendo, but you get that upgraded music, you get that upgraded graphics. It's just a little bit more playable, if you ask me, than the Nintendo version. But this game you can get. Not only is it cool for your collection because it's Robocop, one of the awesome, film series from the 80s that were just mind-blowing at the time with the violence and just the crazy stuff that was in that movie. But the game, like I said, you get on the Nintendo, it's just a little bit different. Maybe not better, maybe not worse on the Super, but it's actually a lot cheaper than getting it on the NES. And I would say probably a little bit more playable on the Super Nintendo for those reasons I mentioned. We got a couple buddies out there that are going to get a kick out of this one. But Home Alone, you know who you are, Tony, back in the day gamer. You know who you're talking about. Go check him out if you guys haven't. Super cool dude. Alright, so Home Alone on the Super Nintendo. Now there's an NES version of this and a Game Boy version of this that are all different. So the NES is the most different. Game Boy runs more like this one, but this is a cool game. Not only is it an iconic movie game, with Home Alone and some of those cutscenes you get in there, and just it really, if you're a kid of the 90s, or even probably just a fan of like these kinds of movies, even now today, this is such a classic, timeless movie that it's really fun to be able to live the movie. That's always the coolest part about these video game movies, right? Is that it really brings you into what you're doing and just it gives it that next level. So that's actually a pretty fun game. For what it is. It's your kind of like standard platformer, but what makes it worth it is those cutscenes and just some of the different stuff. That now the NES port is a completely different game. It's really fun and super underrated. If you ask me, it's got some dynamic like AI in it that is unheard of for the time, and it's a game that holds up today. In fact, if you ask me, I thought it was pretty fun. I actually would love to get it in box, but for some reason it's a game that no one likes, but the in-box price is just stupid because it's got Macaulay Culkin on it or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, that's a super fun game. I'm gonna look to play through that maybe around the holidays, and that's what's always fun too, is to have certain games you play at certain times of the year, holidays especially. And really, realistically, there are not that many games geared specifically toward certain holidays, one or the other, right? There are some, but they're far and few between. All right, next up, you've got Fighters Destiny, a Data East game. Now this, at the time, I remember playing this and hating it because you've got Street Fighter II Turbo, you've got Mortal Kombat, you've got so many other better fighting games, Art of Fighting, SNK, King of Fighters. You've got so many better games, but I guess this is Data East's attempt to throwing their hat in the ring into the fighter genre. I don't know how well this did in arcades or any of that, so that would actually be interesting to know, some Fighters history on Fighters history, right? That's what it's called, right? So, but this is actually a really cool game that you can get for probably like 20 bucks. And if you've seen the price of some of these games, $20 for a fighting game on the 16-bit era is reasonable. So I would recommend that you grab that game if you like fighting games. It's very, very basic. Think more like Street Fighter, original Street Fighter, not Street Fighter II Turbo or any of those upgrades since then, but think that like real basic fighting formula. It's actually a pretty fun game, and there's some characters in there that might blow your mind. Think Data East. It's a surprise, but not really because I'm going to show it to you. Well, that's a fun game. You can get it pretty reasonable. I think I got that for like $10. So the label's a little messed up or whatever. No big deal. Game worked, so we're good there. Alright, next up, we've got, there's a lot of these, and they get kind of thrown in there and tossed around. And I remember renting this game, but it escaped my mind until I saw it. And you look at it and you think, oh yeah, it's just one of those games. But it's actually really cool. If you enjoyed platformers and you enjoyed this era of gaming, right here, Clock is a really fun game that, and you gotta see that Trade West tag on there. You gotta love that. Clock is a really cool, unique kind of game. It's got that kind of claymation style animation that you saw in some of the games there of this time. Like not so much, but really it does. And it's got that really cool overworld map. It's got some interesting stuff in it. It's got power-ups, different things you can get. So for what it is, if you're gonna get there's a lot of platformers in this era, right, that you saw. So to be able to get that game and have those different varieties, but still have some of the stuff that you like from like Mario or some of those other things. And it's actually a really accessible game. Yes, it's platforming and there's some just god-awfully difficult spots where you're gonna fall, but for a game of this time, it's very forgiving. and actually really interesting, some of the stuff you can do. There's boss battles, there's all this different cool stuff in there. Very fun game, and you can maybe get that for reasonable. Okay, so keep an eye out for Plock. Next up, we have, now there's several games, like there's, again, you're just maybe seeing a little bit of a theme here. There's some movie games. I actually didn't ever know this game existed, although I feel like I had maybe played it before and immediately stopped playing it. There's some games out there, kind of like Jurassic Park, Out of This World, in this kind of vein. But right here, you've got No Escape. It's a Sony Image Soft picture, right? Which is cool. They did fun games like Hook and some of those different ones of this time. And I didn't even really know this was a game. I feel like I saw it before, or maybe played it and put it down immediately. But it kind of runs like some of the games, Jurassic Park, Flashback, Out of This World. It kind of runs like that a little bit, and it's very challenging. But it's a super cool game with some stuff in there that, you know, the movie content, the cutscenes, some of the different like items and power-ups you can get are very cool. If you want to put the time into that game, you probably might have a hidden gem on your hands right there with the way it works. But yes, No Escape. It's actually really difficult to find, but the price is still pretty low. And for a movie-style title that is probably kind of rare, keep your eye out for that one. All right, next up, we have Combat Tribes. Again, you can see here Technos Japan. So again, they're associated, you know, Trade West and the Double Dragon, kind of Battletoads, River City Ransom, those kind of games. So what you have here is a really fun game that you might have never even heard of, the Combat Tribes. It's pretty silly. I don't know if it's like a 3-player game in the arcades, but it is co-op here on the SNES. I don't know about 3 players. I didn't look into that, but it's a really cool game. If you've ever played like Super Double Dragon on the Super Nintendo, there's this combat style you can do that feels really like you're in it with the martial arts and the different stuff. Like you can do so many different combos. This isn't quite that extensive, but you can see that it was kind of maybe the early engine for that game, or maybe came out after as kind of like a knockoff version of that. But if you don't want to pay $80 for Super Double Dragon on the Super Nintendo, you can get Combat Tribes. And it's a pretty fun game. Like I said, it's got the co-op. It's got interesting enemies. It's got really short levels, which is fun too. And kind of similar to like a Final Fight, but maybe not as aggressive as a Final Fight. I had a little bit easier of a time. Final Fight can get really rough. And again, if you want to go buy a Final Fight game on Super Nintendo, I don't even know, $80 or something ridiculous. So grab that if you want a fun beat 'em up that has co-op and some interesting kind of characters and stuff in it. Super silly, right? So that's a cool game. Don't sleep on that one. All right. Up next, if you enjoy RPGs, you know in the 16-bit era, Super Nintendo is king for RPGs and other more like JRPGs, but there's also some really good dungeon crawling RPGs in this era. And as you know, the price of RPGs on any system typically is outrageous. Like you can't even buy them. You don't even want to think about buying them. So in the vein of some of the games, we have Obitus. I remember renting this game and never knowing what to do. As a kid, trying to do this game was super confusing. But if you played early dungeon crawling games, Ultima Underworld is one of my favorite early PC 90s. That game just reminds me what it was and basically bore my love for RPGs and dungeon crawling and just that next level of immersion, because that game was so freaking hard. I never even came close to beating it. And you know, I have a disc that has both 1 and 2 on it, but I can't play it because I don't have the old memory that no computer uses anymore. But anyway, there's probably other ways to play it. But that was one of my favorite games. It's a game that brought me in to the genre, into RPGs, into D&D style. So you get, you know, the text-based kind of feel to this, the tabletop feeling brought to a video game. And at the time, that was kind of a rare thing. You had games like Eye of the Beholder, Dungeon Master, or Dungeon Keeper, something like that. Those are on the Super Nintendo as well. There's a couple other ones like that. And they're very pricey. Draken is another one in that style. So as a kid, you maybe want something a little easier and more user-friendly. But as an adult gamer, if you're looking to have a really cool RPG experience that is what it was, like literally what it was to be in RPG, like Dungeons and Dragons, it gave you that feel. Like if you want to know what it was like to play those style games in that era, this game will give you a very good perspective on that. And I recommend it if you like those games. It's hard as nails. I mucked around with it for a little bit, just kind of in the map system. Hey, it has a compass, which you got to use, right? But other than that, you want to be taking down your notes. And it even says, like in the manual, in some of the text on it, that it encourages you to make your own maps. And that was a big thing back in the day. You had to make your own maps. They didn't have strategy books. You could call the tip lines or whatever. There wasn't all these other ways we have now to kind of get walkthroughs and different things. So you were making your own maps. I remember charting maps for all sorts of games back when. So, and that's a game that actually encourages you to do that. So how cool. I mean, it's just another skill, map making. Hey, throw it in there. Why not? But yeah, totally cool game. And like I said, as you know, RPGs on the Super Nintendo and just any of those 16-bit, 32-bit systems are usually rather pricey. Like, you don't even want to think about buying them because just the overall cost of them. But right here, Obitus, you can get it reasonable. It is seeing an increase in price, but not everybody's caught up with that yet. So keep it up. Keep an eye out. A lot of these games, like I said, I got them for reasonable prices, but it's like almost as soon as I bought them, the next round of them doubled in price. So you can still get them though. So keep your eye out for these games. These are some good games. They represent the system well, the Super Nintendo well. There's a good variety here for you. So, you know, it's not your typical games that you're going to hear about necessarily. So these are kind of, like I said, these are maybe ones people are maybe sleeping on or haven't heard of. So coming up next. Now this, like I said, these aren't in any really particular order, but I kind of placed them in the order of how I thought value and play and just overall fun. So this is a super cool game right here. Conscaper, another Data East game. Now this is cool because it's like a Joe and Mac style game, but maybe it has a little bit more. Joe and Mac seems very linear, you know. But this kind of plays more like a newer version of a platforming game. Like Joe and Mac, I feel is like that classic traditional arcade, you know, 8-bit experience you're gonna get on some of those just straightforward, you know, start, finish, the level. This has a lot more going on for it. Kind of feels more like an Adventure Island or a Super Adventure Island or something like that in terms of some of the different stuff you can do with that. But yeah, they're, you know, the Joe and Macs actually aren't that bad. The Adventure Islands aren't that bad. So you could get, you know, this if you've played those games and like them and you like that style game. Conscaper for you. Very cool. Now this is, out of all these, if I were to rank them, this is the top value. King of Monsters 2. So King of Monsters is a well-known arcade, like Neo Geo cab that you would go and play and fight and beat 'em up, kind of like Next Level Rampage. I believe it has ties to that series as well. So you think the first King of Fighters, it's more kind of just like a, you know, top-down fighting in the city, destroying the buildings, but it's more like a fighting game. This right here version on the Super Nintendo runs a lot more like the Neo Geo ACA arcade version of the game, where it is actually a co-op beat 'em up. Okay, so, and if you know, you're aware, beat 'em ups on the Super Nintendo, or beat 'em ups in general on any system really, they're some of the most sought after games. Beat 'em ups, shumps, RPGs. Okay, you could go and try to find any of those, you know, beat 'em up style games, think like Knights of the Round or any of those really expensive games on Super Nintendo and pay hundreds of dollars for those. But right here, what you have, I think people forgot about it. I think they lumped it into their minds that it was just like the first one. They played maybe the Sega Genesis port, and it's a completely different game on Sega Genesis. Not to say it's a worse game or anything, but if you look at the Sega Genesis one, it's more like what you would kind of maybe put this in your mind as that style game. It was like a bad port of an arcade game to console that kind of got like watered down and turned into something else. But right here is probably the best value you can get. I think you can find this most places for $10 or $15 right now. That being said, like I talked about earlier, a lot of these games are seeing an increase in price. This thing is trending up very quickly. I actually tried to get this video out to you guys a lot sooner, but had some complications with some different stuff. But this game right here, if you want to buy any of these games, absolutely go buy this right now. Pay $20, $30 for it, because it's not going to go down. It's going to keep going up. It is a totally awesome game. There's different modes. You can do one-player mode. You can do co-op. You can do verse. You can do verse, you know, fighting each other or fighting with each other. So like opposite co-op, like anti-co-op fighting, and they're trying to get the objective, fighting for points, fighting each other, you know, trying to do whatever it is you do in that battle style thing. So what a cool game. The moves, and some of the moves in there, it feels like wrestling. So if you like wrestling and you like monsters, King of Monsters 2 on the Super Nintendo is an absolute must get. You gotta go get it. Get it right now before it keeps going up in price. What a fun game. It's cool one player, even better if you grab a buddy and do it. And if you don't like that guy, maybe grab an enemy or a frenemy, right? Beat him up as you play through the game. It's just so cool how you can do that. So is collecting still worth it? I would say absolutely yes. You can still go out there and find these deals. Heck, you can even find these deals online. If you're willing to take the time, if you're willing to look around and do all that. Alright guys, well thanks for hanging out. You've been here with Brothers Forge Gaming. We hope this video was informative, helpful to you to find some games that you maybe otherwise didn't know about. Or hey, some fun games to play, something neat to add to your collection. Whatever it is, we hope this video helped you out. We hope you enjoyed your time with us here. And, thanks for coming by. We appreciate all your support, guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.